إن الأعداء لا يرحمون الإسلام.
Let's begin in a time of great uncertainty, a period when mighty empires were falling and new powers were beginning to rise from the ashes. Our story unfolds in a small town called Sagat in Anatolia, around the year 1258. A child named Osman is born into a world teetering on the edge of chaos. The once great Byzantine Empire is growing weaker by the day, and the Mongols have recently stormed into Baghdad, leaving destruction in their wake. Yet, amidst all this upheaval, new opportunities begin to appear, and Osman's tribe is one of the many small groups looking to seize them. Osman became the Bey chief of his tribe in 1280, after his father Ertugrul's death. His rise to leadership wasn't smooth. He had to defeat his uncle Dundar Bey, who opposed his ambition. This struggle was a turning point, showing Osman's determination and military prowess.
One fascinating aspect of Osman's life was his close relationship with Sheikh Edebali, a respected Sufi scholar. It's said that Osman had a profound dream while staying at Edebali's home. In the dream, a moon emerged from the Sheikh's chest and entered Osman's chest. A massive tree then grew from Osman's chest, covering the world, with its branches symbolizing future Ottoman expansion. Although the historical accuracy of this dream is debated, it became a symbolic legend that inspired his followers. Osman's marriage to Sheikh Edebali's daughter, Rabia Bala Hatun, further cemented his leadership role. It also gave him spiritual legitimacy, as he became associated with Islamic scholars and warriors who were crucial in shaping the Ottoman state.
One lesser-known fact is that Osman never actually held the title of Sultan during his lifetime. Instead, he was known as Bey or Emir. His son Orhan was the first to use the Sultan title after Osman's death. Despite this, Osman is considered the founder of one of the greatest empires in world history, which lasted over 600 years. The empire's name itself, Ottoman, is derived from the anglicized version of Osman's name, a legacy that would extend far beyond his lifetime. His leadership combined a blend of Islamic principles and nomadic warrior culture, which set the foundation for a powerful dynasty. The Early Empire, the rise of Osman and Orhan. The early period of the Ottoman Empire saw the transformation of a small semi-nomadic tribe into a structured political and military force. This change was led by Osman I, the founder, and his son Orhan, who carried forward his father's ambitions, solidifying Ottoman control in Anatolia and setting the stage for further expansion into Europe. Osman I's early conquests and legacy. Born around 1258, Osman I led his tribe during a time when the Byzantine Empire was weakening, and the Mongol invasions had destabilized much of the region. He built the foundation of the Ottoman state by uniting several smaller Turkish tribes and defeating local Byzantine garrisons. His first notable victory was at the Battle of Beyfus in 1302, where his forces decisively defeated a Byzantine army, a significant win that demonstrated the emerging power of the Ottomans. One of Osman's greatest strengths was his ability to attract a diverse group of followers. He didn't just lead warriors, he welcomed scholars, Sufis, and merchants into his domain. This inclusivity helped strengthen the new Ottoman state. His close relationship with Sheikh Edebali, a Sufi mystic, gave him spiritual legitimacy and earned him the support of religious groups, which was crucial for the growing state. The dream Osman reportedly had, where a tree grew from his chest and covered the world, is symbolic of his vision for a great empire, inspiring his people to believe in their destiny of expansion. Despite these successes, Osman did not live to see the full extent of his ambitions realized. He died in either 1324 or 1326, shortly before or after the siege of Bursa, a city that would become vital to the future of the Ottoman Empire. Orhan and the capture of Bursa. The reign of Orhan, 1326 to 1362, is marked by a crucial event that propelled the Ottoman Empire forward, the capture of Bursa in 1326. Bursa's location made it a strategic target, as it was a key Byzantine city situated in the northwestern Anatolian region. The siege, which began in the early 1320s, culminated in victory under Orhan's leadership, marking the first major Ottoman conquest of a Byzantine stronghold. The significance of Bursa cannot be overstated. It became the first capital of the Ottoman Empire and served as both an administrative and cultural center. The Ottomans transitioned from a mobile nomadic lifestyle to a more settled and organized state. Bursa's fertile lands and position on trade routes allowed it to thrive economically, becoming a hub for commerce and craftsmanship. With the establishment of madrasas, Islamic schools, and mosques, the city also became a center for Islamic learning and spirituality, further cementing Ottoman authority. Beyond the immediate benefits, Bursa symbolized a turning point in Ottoman strategy. Instead of relying on short-term raids and nomadic practices, Orhan's rule focused on building permanent institutions. He introduced coinage, creating the first Ottoman currency, which strengthened the economy and made trade easier within the empire. Orhan also organized a standing army, including the Janissaries, an elite military corps initially made up of non-Muslim captives who were converted to Islam and trained as soldiers. Early territorial expansion and diplomacy. Orhan's success did not stop at the capture of Bursa. His leadership saw the early expansion of the Ottoman Empire into Byzantine-controlled territories. He continued his father's legacy by taking control of Nicaea, modern Iznik, in 1331 and Nicomedia, modern Izmit, in 1337. These victories allowed the Ottomans to control key territories in northwestern Anatolia, positioning themselves as a serious power in the region. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Orhan did not rely solely on military conquest to expand his influence. He married Theodora, the daughter of Byzantine Emperor John VI Kantakouzenos, in 1346, which provided the Ottomans with a valuable diplomatic connection to the Byzantine court. This marriage demonstrates Orhan's diplomatic skill, allowing the empire to gain influence through both war and alliances. His expansionist policies laid the groundwork for future Ottoman conquests in Europe, particularly the Balkans, which would soon become a significant focus of the empire. What if the Ottomans failed to capture Bursa? If the Ottomans had failed to secure Bursa, the trajectory of their empire might have looked entirely different. Bursa's wealth and strategic position were essential to the Ottoman state's early consolidation of power. Without it, the Ottomans might have remained a regional power rather than growing into a global empire. A failure at Bursa could have emboldened the Byzantines or other Turkish rivals, delaying Ottoman expansion or even leading to the empire's premature collapse. Without the economic and cultural center that Bursa provided, the Ottoman Empire's ability to transition from a nomadic to a settled empire might have faltered. Additionally, early institutions like the coinage system, standing army, and madrasas, which were established in Bursa, may not have developed as early or at all. This would have left the Ottomans in a much weaker position to launch their later conquests in Europe. Expansion into Europe, Murad I and the Battle of Kosovo. As the Ottoman Empire continued to grow, the reign of Murad I, 1362 to 1389, marked a crucial period of expansion into Europe. Murad's leadership saw the consolidation of power in the Balkans and several decisive victories that paved the way for long-lasting Ottoman influence in Europe. The rise of Edirne as a new capital. One of Murad's first major acts was shifting the Ottoman capital from Bursa to Edirne, formerly Adrianople, around 1369. This move was highly strategic, placing the Ottomans closer to Europe and signaling their intent to expand further into the Balkans. Edirne, located near the borders of both the Byzantine Empire and Bulgaria, provided a strong base for military campaigns. It became a vital political and cultural center, serving as the capital for nearly 90 years until Constantinople was captured in 1453. The shift from Bursa to Edirne also reflected the Ottomans' growing ambition, moving from an Anatolian power to a European force. Edirne's significance cannot be overstated. It wasn't just a military stronghold, but also a flourishing cultural hub. The city's strategic location on the Maritsa River helped the Ottomans control trade routes in the Balkans. Murad commissioned several important architectural projects, including mosques and bridges, further establishing Ottoman dominance in the region. The Battle of Kosovo, 1389, a turning point. The Battle of Kosovo, fought on June 28, 1389, was one of the most significant military encounters in the Ottoman expansion into Europe. Facing an alliance of Serbian, Bosnian, and Albanian forces led by Prince Lazar of Serbia, Murad I sought to decisively defeat the Christian Balkan states resisting Ottoman control. The battle took place on the Kosovo field, modern-day Kosovo, and both sides suffered heavy losses. Although Murad I was killed during the battle, his army won a decisive victory. Murad was reportedly killed by a Serbian knight, Miloš Obilic, who pretended to defect to the Ottoman side but instead assassinated the Sultan in his camp. Despite this tragic loss, the Ottomans managed to hold their ground and inflicted significant damage on the Serbian forces. The outcome of the battle solidified Ottoman control over much of the Balkans and marked a turning point in Balkan history. One notable aspect of the Battle of Kosovo is its enduring legacy. For the Ottoman Empire, it marked the firm establishment of their presence in the Balkans, and Murad's son, Bayezid I, quickly took over the leadership to continue the campaign. For the Balkan states, however, Kosovo became a symbol of resistance and martyrdom. Even today, the battle is remembered in Serbian folklore and is viewed as a defining moment in the struggle between Christian Europe and the expanding Ottoman Empire. Long-term effects of the Battle of Kosovo. The victory at Kosovo had lasting consequences for both the Ottomans and the European powers. For the Ottoman Empire, it allowed further expansion into the Balkans, including parts of modern-day Serbia, Albania, and Macedonia. The weakened Balkan states could no longer resist Ottoman advances, and over time, many were absorbed into the empire. This created a Muslim presence in the Balkans that remains today. The defeat, however, left the Christian Balkan states vulnerable to Ottoman rule for centuries. Kosovo can be compared to modern geopolitical conflicts, where a single battle or event shifts the balance of power for generations. Just as Kosovo defined the future of the Balkans, modern conflicts in regions like the Middle East or Eastern Europe often lead to long-term shifts in borders, governments, and cultures. What if the Ottomans had lost at Kosovo? This question helps illustrate the high stakes of the battle. A loss could have halted Ottoman expansion and changed the course of European history. The Ottoman presence in Europe could have been delayed or prevented entirely, leaving the region under Christian rule and creating a different power dynamic in the centuries that followed. The Battle of Kosovo serves as a pivotal moment in history, both for the Ottomans and for Europe. The long-term effects are still felt today, particularly in the Balkans, where the memory of Kosovo remains a key part of national identity. By exploring these aspects in greater detail, Murad I's role in expanding into Europe, the significance of Edirne, and the turning point of the Battle of Kosovo, this chapter offers an in-depth look at how the Ottomans established their presence in Europe and the lasting impact of their victories. The fall of Constantinople, the Great Triumph. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 under Mehmed II, also known as the Conqueror, is one of the most significant events in world history. This conquest not only ended the Byzantine Empire but also marked the beginning of a new era for the Ottoman Empire, positioning it as a dominant power in both Europe and Asia. The city's capture had immense strategic, economic, and symbolic importance, turning Constantinople into the new Ottoman capital, Istanbul, and transforming the empire into a vast, multi-ethnic, and multi-religious state. The importance of Constantinople. Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, was strategically located between Europe and Asia and controlled key trade routes across the Mediterranean and Black Seas. The city had withstood multiple sieges throughout its history due to its formidable Theodosian walls, which had protected it for over 1,000 years. Constantinople was also a symbol of the Christian world, the last stronghold of the Eastern Roman Empire, and a vital cultural and religious center. For Mehmed II, conquering the city was not just a matter of military victory, but also a deeply symbolic achievement. He believed that the fall of Constantinople would fulfill the centuries-old Islamic prophecy that the city would one day fall to Muslim hands. The conquest would also solidify his position as a ruler who could unite both Eastern and Western territories under Ottoman rule. The Siege of Constantinople, May 1453. In April 1453, Mehmed II began the siege of Constantinople with an army of over 80,000 soldiers and a large fleet of ships. One of the key elements of the siege was Mehmed's use of advanced military technology. He deployed cannons, including the massive Great Turkish Bombard, which could fire heavy stone balls capable of breaching the city's thick walls. This technology was revolutionary at the time, marking a shift from traditional methods of warfare to more modern, destructive tactics. The Ottoman army also employed a unique strategy to bypass the Byzantine navy's blockade of the Golden Horn, a waterway that provided the Byzantines with a defensive barrier. Mehmed ordered his forces to drag ships overland, moving them across a wooden platform to launch them into the Golden Horn from the opposite side. This maneuver caught the Byzantines by surprise, allowing the Ottomans to blockade the city from both land and sea. After 53 days of siege, on May 29, 1453, the Ottomans finally breached the walls of Constantinople. The defenders, numbering around 7,000 soldiers, were overwhelmed by the larger Ottoman force. Constantine XI, the last Byzantine emperor, died in the battle, and the city fell into Ottoman hands. The transformation of Constantinople into Istanbul. With the fall of Constantinople, Mehmed II declared the city as the new Ottoman capital and immediately began its transformation. He allowed his soldiers to loot the city for 3 days, a common practice after a conquest, but soon took measures to restore order. Mehmed saw himself as a successor not just to the Byzantine emperors, but also to the Roman Caesars. He adopted the title Caesar of Rome, and sought to integrate the diverse populations of the city into his empire. To rebuild and repopulate the city, Mehmed invited people from different ethnicities and religions, Greeks, Armenians, Jews, and Muslims, to settle in Constantinople. He also encouraged the construction of new mosques, including the iconic Hagia Sophia, which was converted from a church into a mosque, symbolizing the Islamic conquest of the city. The fall of Constantinople marked the beginning of a multi-ethnic empire under Ottoman rule. Mehmed's vision was to create a capital that would be both a political and cultural hub, bridging the gap between the East and West. He revitalized trade by reopening the city's ports, which had been stagnant during the Byzantine decline, and invested in the construction of public works, such as schools, baths, and markets. Over time, Istanbul became a cosmopolitan center of trade, learning, and culture, earning its reputation as one of the greatest cities in the world. The fall of Constantinople as a modern analogy. The fall of Constantinople can be compared to modern technological disruptions. Just as the internet has transformed entire industries, displacing traditional business models, like print media and retail, Mehmed II's conquest of Constantinople reshaped the political and economic landscape of the region. Much like how new technologies have made older systems obsolete, Mehmed's use of gunpowder and cannons represented a leap forward in military strategy, bringing an end to the age of fortified cities. The fall of Constantinople also marked a geopolitical shift. Similar to how the digital revolution has changed the balance of power between industries and nations, Mehmed's conquest redefined power in Europe and the Middle East. It forced European powers to rethink their strategies and trade routes, eventually leading to the age of exploration as Europeans sought new ways to access Asian markets without passing through Ottoman-controlled territory. By capturing Constantinople, Mehmed II not only achieved a significant military victory, but also laid the foundation for the Ottoman Empire's rise as a major world power. The fall of Constantinople was not merely the end of the Byzantine Empire. It was the beginning of a new dynamic period in world history that would shape the future of both Europe and Asia. Suleiman the Magnificent, the Golden Age. The reign of Suleiman I, also known as Suleiman the Magnificent, 1520 to 1566, represents the golden age of the Ottoman Empire, a period in which the empire reached its greatest territorial expansion, cultural development, and military power. During this era, the empire not only dominated large parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa but also experienced a flourishing of arts, architecture, law, and governance. Military conquests in Hungary and Rhodes. One of Suleiman's early accomplishments was his military expansion into Europe. In 1521, he captured Belgrade, a strategic stronghold on the Danube River that had previously resisted Ottoman advances. This conquest paved the way for further incursions into Hungary. Suleiman's most significant victory in Hungary came at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, where his forces decisively defeated the Hungarian army, leading to the fall of the Kingdom of Hungary. This victory allowed the Ottomans to exert influence over much of Central Europe. At the same time, Suleiman set his sights on the island of Rhodes, which was under the control of the Knights of St. John, a Christian military order. Rhodes had been a thorn in the side of the Ottoman Empire, serving as a base for Christian raids on Muslim ships. In 1522, after a long and bloody siege, Suleiman finally captured Rhodes, forcing the Knights to leave the island and securing Ottoman control of the eastern Mediterranean. The failed siege of Vienna, 1529. In 1529, Suleiman launched an ambitious campaign to capture Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg Empire and the gateway to Central Europe. His army, bolstered by earlier victories, advanced into Austrian territory, reaching the walls of Vienna in September. However, despite a well-coordinated siege, Suleiman's forces were unable to break through the city's defenses. Harsh weather conditions, supply shortages, and fierce resistance from the defenders forced the Ottomans to retreat after several weeks of fighting. The failed siege of Vienna was a turning point in Ottoman expansion into Europe. Had Suleiman succeeded in taking Vienna, it's possible that much of Central and Western Europe could have come under Ottoman rule, potentially altering the course of European history. What if Suleiman had captured Vienna? Could the Ottomans have expanded further into Europe, reaching regions like Germany or Italy? Would the balance of power between Christian Europe and the Islamic world have shifted dramatically? Cultural and architectural achievements. While Suleiman is often remembered for his military campaigns, his reign was also marked by tremendous cultural and architectural achievements. Under his rule, the Ottoman Empire became a center of Islamic culture, attracting scholars, artists, and poets from across the Muslim world. The empire saw a flourishing of literature, calligraphy, and painting, with Suleiman himself being a patron of the arts. One of the most visible legacies of Suleiman's reign is the Suleymani Mosque in Istanbul, built between 1550 and 1557 by the famous Ottoman architect Mimar Sinan. The mosque is an architectural masterpiece, combining Islamic design elements with Byzantine influences from the Hagia Sophia. The Suleymani Mosque not only served as a place of worship but also housed schools, a hospital, a library, and public kitchens, reflecting Suleiman's vision of Istanbul as the heart of the empire. Suleiman's reign also saw the codification of Ottoman laws. Known as Kanuni or the Lawgiver, Suleiman reformed the legal system to create a unified set of laws that applied to both Muslims and non-Muslims within the empire. His legal reforms helped solidify the empire's reputation as a just and well-governed state, attracting scholars and administrators from across the Muslim world. What if Suleiman had successfully captured Vienna in 1529? The conquest of Vienna would have been a major turning point in European history. The Habsburgs, one of the most powerful dynasties in Europe, might have been weakened or even collapsed, allowing the Ottomans to expand further into the heart of Europe. This could have had a profound effect on the development of European politics, religion, and culture. For example, had the Ottomans pushed into Germany or Italy, the Protestant Reformation, already in full swing by 1529, might have taken a different course. European alliances could have shifted dramatically as states scrambled to either resist or align with the Ottoman Empire. Even the eventual colonization of the Americas by European powers might have been influenced, as European states would have faced greater pressure at home rather than focusing on overseas expansion. The tensions between the Ottomans and the Habsburg Empire throughout Suleiman's reign set the stage for centuries of conflict between Christian Europe and the Islamic world. Suleiman's golden age was a time of great achievement for the Ottoman Empire. Under his rule, the empire reached its territorial zenith, expanded its influence into Europe and the Mediterranean, and became a center of cultural and architectural brilliance. Suleiman's legacy as both a military leader and a patron of the arts cemented his place in history as one of the greatest rulers of the Ottoman Empire. Internal struggles and the beginning of decline. By the late 16th and 17th centuries, the Ottoman Empire began to experience significant internal challenges that would eventually contribute to its long, slow decline. This period was marked by growing corruption, weakening of key military institutions like the Janissaries, and significant military defeats that weakened the empire's hold on its territories. The roots of these problems lay in both internal mismanagement and external pressures from a rapidly changing world. The rise of corrupt officials as the Ottoman Empire expanded, it became increasingly difficult to maintain effective governance over such a vast and diverse territory. By the late 16th century, the centralized system of governance that had functioned well under rulers like Suleiman the Magnificent began to falter. One key issue was the rise of corrupt officials within the imperial bureaucracy. Many high-ranking positions were often awarded based on favoritism and bribes rather than merit, leading to ineffective administration and the mismanagement of resources. The weakening of the Janissary Corps. Another major factor contributing to the empire's decline was the weakening of the Janissary Corps, the elite military force that had once been the backbone of the Ottoman army. Originally composed of Christian boys taken through the Devshirme system, the Janissaries were trained to be loyal only to the Sultan and were highly disciplined soldiers. However, by the late 16th century, the Janissary Corps began to lose its effectiveness. The Janissaries gradually became more involved in politics and gained significant power within the empire. Many Janissaries began to demand privileges, including the right to marry and pass their positions on to their sons, which diluted the discipline and fighting spirit that had made them so formidable. Over time, the Janissaries became less focused on military service and more interested in securing personal wealth and influence. As a result, the once elite fighting force became an increasingly corrupt and ineffective institution. This decline in military effectiveness had serious consequences for the empire's ability to defend its borders and maintain control over its vast territories. The weakening of the Janissaries left the empire vulnerable to both internal rebellions and external attacks from rival powers. Defeats at Lepanto, 1571, and Vienna, 1683, two major military defeats during this period further signaled the empire's weakening. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571 was a devastating naval loss for the Ottomans. A coalition of Christian powers, known as the Holy League, decisively defeated the Ottoman fleet in the Mediterranean, marking the first major defeat of the empire's navy in over a century. While the defeat at Lepanto did not immediately diminish Ottoman control of the eastern Mediterranean, it was a psychological blow to the empire and signaled the growing strength of European powers. The Siege of Vienna in 1683 marked another significant turning point. The Ottomans, under Kara Mustafa Pasha, attempted to capture Vienna for a second time, but the siege ended in failure when the Holy Roman Empire and its allies, led by the Polish King John III Sobieski, launched a counterattack that routed the Ottoman forces. The defeat at Vienna marked the end of Ottoman expansion into Europe and the beginning of a gradual retreat from its European territories. The internal struggles of the Ottoman Empire can be compared to modern states facing political corruption, economic instability, and military inefficiency. Just as the Ottomans suffered from a bloated bureaucracy and corrupt officials, many modern nations also struggle with governance issues, where leaders and officials prioritize personal gain over public service. These problems, if not addressed, can lead to political instability, economic collapse, and even the downfall of governments. Similarly, the weakening of the Janissary Corps mirrors the decay of once powerful institutions in today's world. In some countries, powerful military or political organizations lose their effectiveness over time due to internal corruption or shifting priorities, leaving the state vulnerable to external threats or internal strife. What if the Ottoman Empire had been able to implement more effective internal reforms? The Ottomans recognized many of their internal problems, but often struggled to implement meaningful reforms that could have reversed the empire's decline. For example, various sultans attempted to reform the Janissary Corps, but these efforts were often met with fierce resistance. If the empire had been more successful in curbing corruption and restoring military discipline, it's possible that the Ottoman Empire could have remained a dominant power for much longer. In this sense, the Ottoman Empire's decline offers lessons for modern states grappling with similar challenges. The inability to effectively reform corrupt systems and weak institutions can lead even the most powerful empires to fall. By the end of the 17th century, the Ottoman Empire faced significant internal challenges that contributed to its decline. The rise of corruption, the weakening of the Janissary Corps, and major military defeats marked the beginning of the empire's long retreat from its former glory. Despite efforts to reform, these internal struggles ultimately weakened the empire's ability to respond to external threats, setting the stage for the Ottoman Empire's slow but eventual collapse. The Tanzimat reforms and European pressure. By the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was increasingly viewed as the sick man of Europe. Facing both internal stagnation and external pressures from rising European powers, the Ottomans attempted a series of reforms known as the Tanzimat to modernize the empire and preserve its territorial integrity. Despite these efforts, the empire continued to lose ground, particularly during the Balkan Wars and other territorial conflicts, as European powers sought to weaken Ottoman influence and expand their own interests. The Tanzimat reforms, 1839 to 1876, The Tanzimat reforms were a series of political, legal and social reforms introduced between 1839 and 1876 in an attempt to modernize the Ottoman Empire and prevent further decline. The word Tanzimat means reorganization, and the reforms were aimed at addressing the empire's internal weaknesses, such as corruption, outdated institutions, and the lack of a cohesive administrative structure. Key elements of the Tanzimat reforms included legal reforms. The Ottomans sought to modernize their legal system, creating new civil and criminal codes inspired by European legal systems. One of the most significant changes was the Hat-i-Serif of Gulhane, 1839, which promised equal rights for all citizens of the empire, regardless of religion. This was a notable shift, as previously, non-Muslims had been subject to additional taxes and restrictions. Military reforms. The Ottomans aimed to modernize their military to compete with European powers. This involved the creation of a conscription system to raise a modern army, as well as the establishment of new military schools to train officers in European tactics. Educational reforms. The empire made efforts to improve education, opening new secular schools and universities to train bureaucrats and professionals who could help modernize the state. Economic and administrative changes. The Tanzimat period also saw attempts to improve the empire's taxation system and create a more centralized administration. The reforms sought to curb the autonomy of local governors and bring more control back to the central government. Despite the ambitious scope of the Tanzimat reforms, they faced significant resistance from conservative factions within the empire, particularly among religious leaders and local officials. Additionally, the reforms were only partially successful in addressing the empire's core problems. Corruption remained rampant, and many of the reforms were unevenly implemented across the empire's diverse and far-flung territories. European interventions and pressure. As the Ottoman Empire struggled to modernize, it faced increasing pressure from European powers, particularly Britain, France, Russia, and Austria-Hungary. The Europeans were both interested in weakening the Ottomans and ensuring that the empire's collapse would not destabilize the balance of power in Europe. This created a complex dynamic in which European powers often intervened in Ottoman affairs, either directly or indirectly. One of the most notable examples of European intervention came during the Crimean War, 1853 to 1856, in which Britain and France supported the Ottomans against Russia. While the Ottomans technically emerged victorious, the war highlighted the empire's dependence on European support to maintain its sovereignty. The Ottoman Empire's declining military and economic power also made it vulnerable to European economic domination. European countries secured favorable trade agreements with the Ottomans, known as the capitulations, which granted European merchants significant privileges and weakened the Ottoman economy. Loss of territories. The Balkan Wars, 1912 to 1913. By the early 20th century, the Ottoman Empire was rapidly losing control over its European territories. The Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913 marked a decisive turning point. Several Balkan states, Serbia, Montenegro, Greece, and Bulgaria, formed the Balkan League and launched a series of military campaigns aimed at driving the Ottomans out of Europe. In the First Balkan War, 1912, the Ottoman Empire lost almost all of its remaining European territories, including the important city of Thessaloniki and much of Macedonia. The Second Balkan War, 1913, saw the Balkan states fighting amongst themselves, but the Ottomans were unable to regain any of their lost territories. These defeats were a major blow to Ottoman prestige and marked the beginning of the end for the empire. By 1913, the Ottomans had lost most of their European territories, leaving only a small portion of land around Istanbul. The empire's decline would culminate in its dissolution after World War I, when the remnants of the Ottoman state were carved up by the victorious Allied powers. Comparing the Ottoman struggle to modern declining superpowers. The Ottoman Empire struggle to retain its territories in the face of internal weaknesses and external pressures can be compared to modern-day superpowers grappling with the loss of influence. Just as the Ottomans attempted to modernize through reforms while facing challenges from rising powers, many nations today find themselves in a similar position. For example, modern superpowers that were once dominant on the global stage may struggle with internal political instability, economic challenges, and competition from rising powers. As these nations attempt to maintain their influence, they may find themselves in a position similar to that of the Ottoman Empire during the Tanzimat period, introducing reforms to modernize but facing resistance from within and pressure from without. The Tanzimat reforms offer a cautionary tale about the difficulties of reforming a deeply entrenched system. Even well-intentioned reforms can fail if they do not address the underlying structural problems or if they face significant resistance from powerful factions. In this sense, the story of the Ottoman Empire's decline remains relevant today. The Tanzimat reforms were a bold attempt to modernize the Ottoman Empire and stave off decline, but they ultimately proved insufficient in the face of both internal challenges and growing European pressure. The empire's gradual loss of territories, culminating in the defeats of the Balkan Wars, signaled the end of its influence in Europe and the beginning of its final collapse. Chapter 8: The Final Collapse, World War I and the Treaty of Sèvres. By the time of World War I, the Ottoman Empire was a shadow of its former self, weakened by centuries of internal decay, territorial losses, and failed reforms. The empire's decision to side with Germany in the conflict would prove fatal, leading to its eventual dissolution and the carving up of its territories. This chapter details the events that led to the empire's final collapse, focusing on the consequences of its involvement in the war and the post-war settlement that sealed its fate. The Ottoman Empire's involvement in World War I. The start of World War I, the Ottoman Empire was facing an existential crisis. Having already lost much of its territory in Europe during the Balkan Wars, 1912 to 1913, the empire was desperately trying to hold on to what remained. The Ottomans entered the war on the side of the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary, hoping that an alliance with Germany would help them regain lost territories and stabilize the empire. The decision to join the war was influenced by several factors. Strategic alliances. The Ottomans believed that Germany's military might would offer protection against further territorial losses and that a German victory would allow the empire to recover lands lost to Britain and France. Internal politics. The ruling faction, the Young Turks, led by figures like Enver Pasha, sought to modernize and strengthen the empire. They saw war as an opportunity to rebuild the empire's strength, even though the empire's military and economic capacity were already strained. However, the decision to join the war was a gamble that did not pay off. The empire became embroiled in multiple fronts, most notably the Gallipoli Campaign, 1915 to 1916, where Ottoman forces, under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, successfully repelled the Allied invasion. Despite such victories, the Ottomans were ultimately overmatched and ill-prepared for the scale of the conflict. The war drained the empire's resources and further weakened its already fragile infrastructure. The Armenian Genocide. One of the darkest chapters of the Ottoman Empire's involvement in World War I was the Armenian Genocide. In 1915, the Ottoman government, fearing that the Armenians, a Christian minority within the empire, would side with the Russians, launched a campaign of mass deportations and killings. Between 600,000 and 1.5 million Armenians are believed to have been killed in what is widely regarded as one of the first modern genocides. The Armenian Genocide remains a controversial subject, with Turkey, the successor state of the Ottoman Empire, still disputing the use of the term genocide. However, for the Ottoman Empire, the genocide was part of a larger pattern of internal strife and repression during the war. As the empire struggled to maintain control over its diverse population while fighting on multiple fronts. The Treaty of Sèvres, 1920. The Treaty of Sèvres, signed in 1920, officially marked the end of the Ottoman Empire. After the Central Powers' defeat in World War I, the victorious Allied powers, Britain, France, and Italy, sought to dismantle the empire, which they viewed as a threat to stability in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. The treaty divided up the Ottoman territories, granting large portions to Allied powers and creating new states in the region. Key elements of the Treaty of Sèvres included loss of Arab lands. The Ottoman Empire lost its Arab territories, including Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, which were placed under British and French control through mandates established by the League of Nations. Loss of European territories. The empire was forced to cede Thrace and most of its remaining European territories to Greece, significantly reducing its influence in Europe. Partition of Anatolia. The treaty also proposed dividing Anatolia, the heartland of the Ottoman Empire, among various ethnic groups and foreign powers. The Kurds and Armenians were promised autonomous regions, and the Greeks were granted control over Smyrna, modern-day Izmir. Economic control. the Ottoman Empire's economy was placed under international supervision, with foreign powers controlling key industries and resources. However, the Treaty of Sèvres was never fully implemented. The terms were seen as humiliating by many within the empire, and it sparked a nationalist movement led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who would later become the founding father of modern Turkey. Ataturk's forces rejected the treaty, and after several years of fighting, the Treaty of Lausanne, 1923, replaced it, establishing the borders of the modern Turkish Republic. What if the empire had stayed neutral in World War I? A key question to explore in this chapter is whether the Ottoman Empire could have survived if it had stayed neutral during World War I. Many historians argue that the empire was already too weak to survive much longer, regardless of its involvement in the war. Its internal problems, economic instability, ethnic tensions, and military decline, were too deeply rooted to be solved without significant reform. However, had the empire managed to stay out of the war, it might have avoided the immediate collapse that followed the Central Powers' defeat. The empire's survival might have depended on its ability to enact meaningful reforms and avoid further external pressure from European powers. But given the rising nationalist movements within the empire and the ambitions of Britain, France, and Russia to control Ottoman territories, the long-term survival of the empire seems unlikely. In the end, World War I hastened the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, but the seeds of its decline had been planted long before the conflict began. The empire's involvement in the war, the atrocities committed during the Armenian genocide, and the harsh terms of the Treaty of Sèvres sealed its fate, leading to the emergence of the modern Middle East and the creation of the Turkish Republic under Ataturk. The empire's story serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of overreach and the importance of internal stability in the face of external threats. Chapter 9: Legacy and Conclusion. The birth of modern Turkey. With the fall of the Ottoman Empire after World War I, a new chapter began in the history of the region, the rise of modern Turkey. This period was defined by the abolition of the Sultanate, the signing of the Treaty of Lausanne, and the transformative reforms implemented by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. The abolition of the Sultanate, 1922. In 1922, the Ottoman Sultanate, which had ruled for over 600 years, was officially abolished. This marked the end of the Ottoman dynasty and the final blow to an empire that had once spanned 3 continents. The decision to abolish the Sultanate was led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, a military leader and nationalist who believed that the Ottoman monarchy was incompatible with the goals of creating a modern secular state. The last Sultan, Mehmed VI, was deposed and went into exile. The abolition of the Sultanate was a pivotal moment in Turkish history, marking the end of an era and the beginning of a new Turkish republic. Ataturk's leadership during this time was instrumental in shaping the country's future and severing ties with the imperial past. The Treaty of Lausanne, 1923. Following the end of World War I, the Treaty of Sèvres had attempted to carve up the remnants of the Ottoman Empire. However, this treaty was never fully implemented due to opposition from Turkish nationalists led by Ataturk. After several years of fighting in the Turkish War of Independence, 1919 to 1923, the Turkish forces managed to renegotiate terms with the Allied powers, leading to the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923. The Treaty of Lausanne is considered the birth certificate of modern Turkey. It recognized the borders of the new Turkish Republic, which included most of Anatolia and eastern Thrace, the remaining Turkish territories after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. The treaty also nullified many of the harsh provisions of the Treaty of Sèvres, restoring Turkish sovereignty and marking a significant victory for Ataturk and his supporters. Ataturk's reforms as the first president of the newly established Republic of Turkey, Ataturk implemented a series of reforms designed to modernize and secularize the country. These reforms touched every aspect of Turkish society, from politics to culture, and were aimed at creating a modern nation-state in the mold of Western European countries. Key reforms included secularization. One of Ataturk's most significant moves was the separation of religion from the state. The caliphate, which had been a symbol of Islamic leadership, was abolished in 1924, and religious influence in government institutions was diminished. Religious schools were replaced by secular education, and Islamic courts were abolished in favor of a new legal system based on European models. Language and education. Ataturk launched a language reform, replacing the Ottoman script, which used Arabic letters, with the Latin alphabet. This was part of a broader effort to modernize Turkish culture and education. He also promoted public education, making it accessible to all and encouraging scientific and technological progress. Women's rights. Ataturk's reforms also extended to gender equality. He granted women the right to vote in 1930 and the right to run for political office in 1934, ahead of many European countries at the time. Ataturk believed that for Turkey to be a modern society, women needed to be empowered and have equal opportunities in education and employment. Economic and social reforms. Ataturk worked to modernize Turkey's economy, focusing on industrialization and infrastructure development. He encouraged the establishment of state-owned enterprises and emphasized the importance of education and healthcare in fostering a healthy and prosperous society. The lasting cultural and political impact of the Ottoman Empire. While the Ottoman Empire no longer exists, its legacy is still felt today across the Middle East, the Balkans, and Turkey itself. The Ottoman system of governance, which incorporated a diverse array of ethnic and religious groups, influenced the way modern states in the region deal with issues of identity and multiculturalism. The Ottoman legal system, architecture, and cultural practices have also left an indelible mark on countries that were once part of the empire. For modern Turkey, the legacy of the Ottoman Empire is complex. On the one hand, Turkey emerged from the ashes of the empire, breaking with the past and charting a new path towards secularism and nationalism. On the other hand, the memory of the empire continues to shape Turkish politics and identity, with some Turks viewing the Ottoman period as a source of pride and cultural heritage. In the wider region, the empire's collapse reshaped the political landscape, giving rise to new nation-states and conflicts that continue to reverberate today. The partitioning of Ottoman lands by the Allied powers after World War I sowed the seeds for many of the modern-day tensions in the Middle East, particularly with regard to the creation of new borders and the establishment of countries like Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. The Ottoman Empire's fall led to the birth of modern Turkey, a country shaped by the visionary leadership of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk and his ambitious reforms. While the Ottoman era has ended, its influence is still deeply embedded in the cultural and political fabric of Turkey and the broader region. The empire's rise and fall offer important lessons about the challenges of modernization, the dangers of overreach, and the enduring power of cultural legacies. The Ottoman Empire may be gone, but its story remains relevant in understanding the world today. Thank you for sticking with us to the very end. Your time is valuable, and the fact that you stayed shows just how dedicated you are to learning about history and the rise and fall of great empires. You're part of an amazing community, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to drop a comment below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on our next video. Your support makes